When we were in Savannah, we went on one of those murder mysteries.
Oh, yeah. Was it fun?
It was fun, but it was so hokey.
Yeah.
Murder mystery. We kept it all vacation. Murder mystery.
Did you like Savannah?
I did.
I wanted to go there.
It's very nice. It's only about 40 minutes away from Hilton Head.
Oh.
There's not a lot to do in Savannah, but very pretty.
You guys taking all that in?
Charleston.
Oh, I'm going to go there in March.
In the accident report.
With
I'm okay with things that are in the accident report. I'm not okay with things that are not in the accident report. Any slide that's not from that report or in that report, I'm not okay with. Move over to Clay.
He's in the men's room.
We have not numbered it yet.
He's right there.
It's going to be 1626.
We still tease her.
I have something for you before we start tonight.
Thomas, ready?
Basically, yes, although we were discussing with the defense.
Mary, are we on?
Yeah. Do you want to go on the record?
Yes. Don't you see their posture? Okay. We're back today in State versus Gaspar. Defendant's present in court with his counsel, prosecutors are present. So.
Judge, the next witness is Christopher Todd Jester of the patrol. He's the crash reconstructionist. His reconstruction report is going to be labeled States 647. He does then have what I consider to be an extract of the report in terms of a PowerPoint presentation, which will be separately numbered. I believe that all the photos, and that's the PowerPoint is going to be States 1626. It's based on 647 in terms of any diagrams or photos that are shown in 1626. There are additional elements or summaries, if you will, of statements that outline the course of the reconstruction report. So, and then there's additional statements of what I would call teaching elements or explanations of the technology used to create the report. But I
assume
do
you're
not.
going to lay a foundation for
Yes.
him
Yes.
before those are shown and introduced to the jury.
Correct.
And I have an objection to this, Your Honor. I've never seen any of this stuff. I don't object to anything in that accident report. I don't objection to any pictures that were in the accident report. Apparently they've had all these slides. I've seen how he's got Blaze has in his hand. They just showed it to me this morning and went through it at high speed. I have no idea what's coming at me. I have no idea what those slides show. I know a lot of them are based on things that aren't in the report. So I guess I'm okay with putting anything in front of the jury that I've seen ahead of time or that was in that accident report. But I have no idea what these recreations do or these slides do, and I haven't seen them coming at me. And apparently they've had them. They could have given these to me yesterday and said, I know what I'm looking at. So I'm taken by surprise in this, and I find an objection.
you showed something to a witness that he had not seen before. He didn't mind surprising him.
Which one?
The trooper that was on, you showed him a chart that was not a chart he was familiar with. All right?
Okay.
Now, there's gamesmanship, and there's trial work, and then there's production of expert witness reports. All right?
Okay.
They apparently have produced an expert witness report to you. As I understand it, they're going to have the trooper lay a foundation for this PowerPoint that he's created. PowerPoints are not unfamiliar in court. They're used in civil and criminal cases by the state, the defense, civil attorneys. If they lay a foundation with the witness for the PowerPoint, they can use it as it helps to explain to the jury his testimony. He is testifying. If he has created this PowerPoint based upon his prior reports that you received, he can use it. If he goes outside of it, he can't use it. Where are the pictures from? Are they from those 1,500 that were already... I'm not looking at them. You tell me where they're from.
They're based on the prior photos and then the video with video capture stills that break down, frankly, Trooper Velez's body in the air. Okay, so there are video capture stills there, and then there's measurements that are derived and calculations that are done.
So these
But that's the overall conclusion is stated in 647.
But the video stills, I mean, we had the same situation in a criminal case a couple months ago. The defense wanted the video played at normal speed. The state did stop action, which clearly showed the defendant was the person committing the robbery. The defense was unhappy with that because it helped prove the state's case, but there was nothing tricky about it. It was a video that they could have stopped the action on, too. You have this video.
Okay. Can I possibly have 15 minutes to look at this?
No objection.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, Pat, just tell them to relax and we're working on some things.
What do you want? Candace, I want to talk about private car.
I'm sure someone wants to say something. All right, so, Mr. Sen, you had a chance to review whatever document it was that Mr. Thomas handed you. Are you satisfied?
I have that opportunity to review it, Your Honor. I'm satisfied that I know what's coming. As far as my earlier objection.
Well, I mean, there's nothing, as I understand, there's nothing in the report. It might be not in the same order as the original expert report, but they're allowed to present the testimony in any form as long as it doesn't deviate from the essence of what was given.
Understood, John.
And they apparently packaged a PowerPoint, which can be a teaching tool, depending on how skilled the presenter is.
Yes, sir.
And did you find the information in there corresponded to what you had known previously?
Yes.
Judge, I'm going to ask for the court's latitude on asking the witness to depart. The witness can't stand next to the Mondo cab.
Might as well move it up now then.
That's right. So, and also, but I'm going to, once I lay the foundation, I would ask that he be allowed to proceed in a narrative fashion without an individual question, unless I feel the need to jump in. But
There
there
have
will be,
been several witnesses that have already
I know, I'm just making it clear.
testified at length without prompting.
Okay. And then if we'll ask for the lights down, at least in the front half of the court.
Perhaps available to accommodate you.
I know.
One more of my skills.
He doesn't mean it. I had him go through his mom.
Mary, will just have the only took one person operating.
Are we good then, judges?
I think so.
And he was better at it than me.
Okay, what did that sound like? Here's how it's reasonable.
She's the back leader, so I sleep between me and her. Keep her trying to think.
That's another one.
I don't know that I could dump yours.
Yeah.
I said, no, no.
The what?
Yes, so the judge can see. The defense has to do the judge doesn't. So you're going to be on this side.
Do you need to come closer?
All rise for the jury. Court is in session. Please be seated.
Welcome back, everyone. Some of you are expanding your horizons and been taking little tours of the floor. That was interesting. The only thing that would improve upon your Indians attire, Mr. Wilson, you need a Pete Franklin model. Meet the Yankee Hanky. Okay.
Do you have one?
I do not. Although, you know, when the Yankees just come to town, the Indians were not a particularly skillful team in the 70s inception. We would always go to there was usually a 4-game series around the 4th of July, and so my dad and I would go to those. And it was a lot of fun because you'd have 50 or 60,000 people at one time in the stadium, and then by September there would be 2,000 or 3,000 close friends. But it's a different time, we have a much different organization, but everybody still loves baseball.
Thank you, Judge. Before calling the next witness, there's a stipulation that this witness, Christopher Todd, Jester of the Ohio State Highway Patrol, is a qualified crash reconstruction expert, and that his testimony and his report are qualified in that regard.
So this testify as an expert witness in crash reconstruction.
Thank you, Judge. The state calls Christopher Todd the Jester.
Sir, if you raise your right hand, please, you solemnly swear or affirm, subject to the penalties of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give here will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Obviously, you've got that binder with you, but you need to stay on top of the mic, so just be mindful of the mic, please, because the chair doesn't move, as you're aware. Would you state and spell your full name, please?
Christopher Todd Jester. Last name is spelled Jester.
Where are you employed?
The Ohio State Highway Patrol.
And what is your current assignment?
I'm a crash reconstructionist for the Warren District, covering 7 counties of Northeast Ohio.
How long have you held that position?
Since 2004.
Now, we just heard a stipulation as to the work that you do and the opinions that you're going to render here today. That binder that you carry to the stand with you, what is that?
It has a copy of my certificates from training, a list of my training, the crash report itself, and the reference materials regarding devices that were used at the time of the investigation.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as States 647. And can you tell me if this is a reproduction of your report? And if it's complete and if it's accurate?
Yes, it appears so.
Okay. And for purposes of your testimony here today, have you created a PowerPoint presentation based on the materials in this investigation and your report for the purposes of presenting your testimony here today?
Yes.
Okay. And showing you what's been marked as States 1626. Can you take a look at this, please? What is States 1626?
This is the printed version of the PowerPoint report.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about the modern method or methodology of crash reconstruction before we get into the particular facts of this case. Can you give us the overview of how you begin, what information you consider and include in your report, what types of hard data are available to you in the modern world, etc.? Okay?
Concerning the reconstruction, my work actually covers both disciplines, crash and crime scene reconstruction. The training between the two actually complements both. In crash reconstruction, we want to make sure that we get scene measurements, and we do that electronically with certain devices. We also consider the actual report itself, the crash report, and any case investigation that accompanies that.
How long did it take to complete this particular report?
This report actually started in September, on the day of the crash, and the investigation concluded approximately December when a preliminary report was created and sent in for checks.
And just so we're clear here, does your report include other investigators' work product?
Yes.
And is that normal in the course of your work that you would rely on other, say, highway patrol troopers or other law enforcement reports to include their information within your crash reconstruction?
Yes.
And is that the norm and accepted way of creating a crash reconstruction report?
Yes.
Now, before we go into the presentation, take us through the topics that we're going to cover, the chapters of the book, if you will.
The crash report, the reconstruction report itself consists of 5 sections. The first section contains crash information, which is a basic overview of the crash, the location, the original report, the crash report itself, and then information on the drivers or pedestrians involved. The second section is reconstruction unit response, which simply tells who was at the scene as far as the reconstruction unit, what their duties were, and what we did. The third section, and the largest, was the reconstruction analysis, where we go through a series of objectives, topics and items that we wanted to cover, and investigate in detail regarding this report. Section number 4 dealt with visibility factors that may have been a factor we wanted to document the conditions at the scene. The section number 5 was a crash causation, which was a summary of the findings of the report. There is an additional section, section number 6, which has the names of those that have contributed to the report from the reconstruction unit and the peer review.
I want to ask you a general question before we go into the particulars here. On crash causation, let me give you a hypothetical. If your investigation had revealed in some way, shape, or form fault, if you will, for lack of a better term, on the part of Trooper Velez in how this incident occurred, would you state that in your findings?
Yes.
And as you understand the state of your investigation, did you find any fault of whatever type or kind, policy, state law, safety issues, whatever the case may be, did you find any fault on the part of Trooper Velez and how he was flagging traffic September 15, 2016?
No.
And why can you say that?
It appears that Trooper Velez was working within department policy, federal regulations, and was doing this activity in a reasonably safe area, the widest part of the berm.
Are you just saying that because you're a co-employee of Trooper Velez that you both work for the patrol?
No.
Judge, I think at this point we're going to turn to the presentation with the prior permission of the court. I'm going to ask that the witness be allowed to leave the stand and proceed in a narrative fashion and proceed through the PowerPoint at his own speed. I've instructed him to use moderate speed and a loud and clear voice.
You still speak fast, so if you could just go a little slow so we can take it all down.
Yes, Your Honor.
Remember, the jury needs the information. They're the people you are addressing. Can we start that?
This presentation is an overview of the reconstruction report by section. It gives some basic information on the report itself. To begin, the investigation began on 9/15/2016 and concluded later in December of 2016 when this report was submitted for review. It consists of over 150 pages, 200 figures, such as diagrams and photographs. It also is accompanied by 6 diagrams to include forensic maps or scale diagrams of the scene and some vehicles. In section 1, we note the crash information, basic information regarding where the crash had occurred at, the crash reporting on the Ohio OH1 or crash report form, and then some information about weather and the driver and pedestrian. Regarding the crash report for the OH1 provided by Lieutenant Gable, we find that on the first page there's a unit error. The unit error is listing unit number 1 at fault for this crash. There are 3 units inside this crash. The first is the 2015 Hyundai Veloster. The second is Trooper Velez as a pedestrian. And the third is the 2015 Dodge Charger that he was driving or was parked on the berm. In the following pages in the crash report, there are spaces for contributing circumstances. For Mr. Gaspar and his vehicle, there are 2 that are marked. The first primary is followed too close or failing to keep an assured clear distance ahead. The next is the improper lane change or passing or traveling off the road, which is listed as number 10. For Trooper Velez, the contributing factor for him as a non-motorist or pedestrian is none. We discussed briefly Trooper Velez's background with the State Patrol, having joined the patrol in 1988 as a cadet dispatcher. Later, he was inducted into the 118th Academy class in 1989 and was subsequently assigned to the Canfield post in Mahoning County. During his time there, he was also involved in a collision between himself as a pedestrian and a hit-and-run vehicle. Trooper Velez's shift was also noted, and there was a statistical analysis of his activity completed by Lieutenant Thorne. The roadway information was also chronicled. The roadway at the time was examined and found to be dry, free of any large debris, repair, or defect. The signage for Interstate 90 westbound was found to be in good condition, with a speed limit sign of 60 miles an hour posted approximately 1,400 feet to the east of the crash location. In the immediate area of the crash, Interstate 90 consists of 8 lanes. Within the median, there was overhead lighting. There is also a wall that separates the two directions. Each travel lane for the westbound traffic is approximately 11 to 12 feet wide, and the berm width varied. For the northbound berm, on the north side of the roadway, the berm is only 11 feet. On the south, in the immediate area of the crash location, it was 21 feet. That is roughly the largest or the widest that this berm gets, and then tapers down as the roadway travels west. There was a steerable ODOT camera that sat just west of this crash location, but at the time of the incident, the camera had been steered to the west, watching eastbound traffic. This is an overhead view of the scene provided by the Cuyahoga County Department of Public Works. It shows the crash location and some dimensions. Signage in the area was visible, in good condition, and clearly stated. There were construction signs or construction warning signs nearby just west of the crash location, as well as a merge sign near the door of Alger Road, speed limit sign, and then informational signs nearby. For the remainder of the report, lanes will be referenced as such, with the southern berm, lane number 1 being the southmost lane, 2, 3, 4, and then the northern berm. Weather at the time was good, 73 degrees, 10 miles visibility, scattered clouds and no precipitation. Section number 2 involves the reconstruction response. Who from our unit was there at the scene, what their duties were, and what was accomplished. We received a request for assistance within 10 minutes of the initial call. I was contacted by my supervisor. I was on duty at the time, attending training with the FBI in Brecksville, and immediately left that location and arrived on scene at 1:51 p.m. On-scene personnel were Lieutenant Chris Kinn, now Lieutenant John Thorne, myself, and Trooper Ryan Thomas. My duties at the scene were to provide scene documentation, photography, and a scene inspection. Prior to any scene documentation, I conducted a walkthrough, and then we began a forensic map, which forensic mapping is simply making a scale diagram of your scene. The forensic mapping is simply a highly detailed way of documenting evidence and features of a scene. It uses a specific protocol. In this case, we use electronic devices such as a total station to document where evidence is and the rough features of the scene as well. A total station is simply survey equipment. It's the same device surveyors, civil engineers, construction workers use. It's a very simple device to use, and what it does is take an infrared beam and fires it to the point of evidence and measures that evidence and then places that evidence in line with everything else. It creates a relationship between all of the measurement points. It can be done by pointing the device directly to the piece of evidence, or actually following a target as I hold it above that evidence. At the scene, this device was placed and recorded 555 measurements to include scene evidence, final rest of vehicles, roadway dimensions, and any other structures that were within the crash area. As a result of that work, the electronic data inside the device was transferred to a computer drafting program, and we were able to make at least 4 scale diagrams of the scene. We also used the device to document damage to the vehicles. The first diagram we did was diagram A. This included both directions of Interstate 90 to include the crash scene. It gave us dimensions. It also provided the points of evidence described. And where the points of evidence were too small to describe, we labeled them with icons and a legend. Diagram B was a closer look at the crash scene itself. It included placard numbers that our investigators used to mark evidence. I used this as a reference for them so they understood where their evidence they had marked was on the diagram. We also include an overhead photograph that was taken by our aviation section. Diagram C is the crash scene again. It does include the placards, but this time we include a narrative, and we also include a photograph of each individual piece of evidence that they had marked. Diagram E removes all those placards and simply focuses on the vehicles themselves, providing a photograph and later a legend with basic vehicle information. While we were at the scene, we used the total station, which is able to get us 1 measurement point per shot. We also used a laser scanner, the Trimble TX5 laser scanner, which provides us with a 3D image of the scene. Instead of 1 measurement per point, it gives us roughly 900,000 measurement points a second. There were 11 scans taken during this time at the scene. The device simply is placed at the scene. It rotates once and places measurement points over everything that's in range. It later on creates a 3D scan which allows you to move the scene about and see it from different perspectives. I also use it on vehicles themselves or other objects to get measurements I couldn't get otherwise. During the on-scene investigation, OSP investigators were in charge of evidence handling and collection, not reconstruction personnel. We both took photographs, and the locations of the evidence at the scene were measured as they were. I didn't ask anyone to put them back where they thought they were. The vehicles had apparently were still at final rest. So when we began to detail the evidence in the report, we started going from east to west in this general area of the crash location. Beginning from the east, the first piece of evidence we found were 3 tire marks. One with a blue arrow inside the lane number 1, approximately 1 to 2 feet. The mark was dark and was sort of angled towards the berm. One with the green arrow was actually going into the berm, however, there was more of it beyond. It was apparently an older mark, possibly created by a trailer tire. The mark with the red arrow began on the berm, traveled next to Trooper Velez's vehicle, and then continued and ended at the left side wheels of the Hyundai. This mark was 189 feet long, and it passed within a foot or two of the patrol vehicle. The other tire marks were 35 feet and also 25 feet respectively from the top to bottom. It's unknown where these 2 marks came from, but this mark here we were able to follow to the Hyundai. The next piece of evidence we found was the vehicle itself. 2015 Dodge Charger. listed as 3215 or car 3215 in the patrol inventory. The vehicle was at final rest. The only damage was found was on the right side mirror and the mirror plate. The vehicle was sitting in the berm, approximately 8 feet from the nearest travel lane, 7 feet from the median barrier. It was facing west. The only damage found was the right side mirror plate. We did not find any area on the actual mirror housing where it was struck by a vehicle, so we believe that this may have been from debris. The first pieces of debris we find are on the vehicle itself. Pieces of tempered glass, apparently from the Hyundai sunroof. They were found on the back of the vehicle and the front, which led us to believe that the collision occurred either beside or a bit behind car 3215. The glass is noted on the forensic map with the orange triangles. To the left rear of the vehicle, near the median barrier, which is roughly a 2.5 to 3 foot concrete wall, was a black plastic bag. Inside the bag contained Trooper Velez's gun belt, his uniform hat, and his firearm, to include taser, handcuff keys, and ammunition. The belt had been cut by emergency personnel, and the firearm itself, that was still holstered, showed signs of grinding. Between the vehicle and the median barrier was a sunglass lens, and on the forensic map, these two items were located here in relation to the vehicle. After that started a debris field. It was a very light debris field, but it contained the tempered glass found from the sunroof and possibly some glass from the windshield of the Hyundai. The debris field was approximately 176 feet long and spanned about 30 to 35 feet wide. Again, it was light. Beyond the vehicle to the west, or beyond Trooper Velez's vehicle, was a sunglass arm. Next item found was the leather microphone pouch used by Trooper Velez. It connects to the duty belt with a nylon strap and 2 metal snaps. The wireless microphone for the video system for the patrol's system is found inside. Not in here, but it fits inside the actual case secured by 1 snap. And there was another sunglass lens nearby. These 2 items were found in front of car 3215, closer to the median barrier. Beyond that was the LTI 2020 laser device. This was the device that Trooper Velez was holding at the time that he was struck, and the device that he was using to check traffic speeds. It was found damaged roughly 16 feet into the berm, with its foldable stock bent. The next area of evidence we found was a 9-foot section of black transfer that was found on the asphalt itself. It appeared that this was from either the duty belt or footwear of Trooper Velez as he came back down to the ground. It's roughly 9 feet in length, sits approximately 2 feet from the travel lane. It's located at the beginning of a right side skid mark emanating from the Hyundai. This skid mark itself is 57 feet long. It was much like the one from the left side. It was a very light mark, typical of ABS operation. In the general area was a 24-foot long area of blood trail in spatter that followed the rumble strip. This trail followed the rumble strip and did also expand onto the travel lane. Roughly 1 to 2 feet inside the travel lane was a piece of bone. This bone was approximately 2 inches long by 1 inch wide. At the end of the blood trail was an area of blood pooling and draining onto the median, roughly 7 feet from the edge of the travel lane. Accompanying this area was Trooper Velez's shirt on the left side to include a partial cut of his undershirt. In addition to these items, there was a cell phone clip and a handcuff key found near the median barrier. This is one of 2 handcuff keys that were found. The next evidence after this was the 2015 Hyundai Veloster. The vehicle had damage to the front, the top, and the right rear, and it appeared to be at final rest since the skids did not go forward of the front tires. Looking at the vehicle, we had evidence of ABS braking on the tires, which instead of a skid patch, you would normally have there's small little speckles, small little streaks as the vehicle stutters. It begins to make these marks. The vehicle is located in the median, in the berm, approximately 4 feet from the travel lane and 9 feet from the median edge. Located on the vehicle itself were more pieces of evidence. The first being the wireless microphone from Trooper Velez. When removed from the case, was found at the base of the windshield. Other items on top of the sunroof were a sunglass arm and Trooper Velez's cell phone with case. The remnants of the sunroof are apparent. Inside the interior, the sunroof shade had been closed a lot, catching this debris. On the front of the vehicle was a damaged license plate. Upon closer examination, there were fibers that were found. These fibers appeared to be the same color as Trooper Velez's sock fabric. And then in the damaged area of the glass, there were white fibers found that were the same color as Trooper Velez's undershirt. Both of these fibers were taken by OIS investigators. Surrounding the vehicle and about the scene were approximately 20 pieces of red taillight lens, these being from the crushed right rear light of the Hyundai. This would have been the second strike location of Trooper Velez. Taillight lens is shown with the purple icons. Approximately 7 feet from the front of the Hyundai and within a 3-foot perimeter was the ballistic vest with other personal items from Trooper Velez. The ballistic vest is enclosed in a case with Velcro attachments. It was found with his identification card, 2 pens, and his badge. The case itself had been ripped and the Velcro also had been separated. "22 feet from the Hyundai, roughly northwest, was another piece of bone that was unaccompanied by any blood or blood spatter. Trooper Velez's radio holder was found on the rumble strip just inside the travel lane, and the second of 2 handcuff keys found as well. At the west edge of the crash location was a 2005 Saab belonging to Mr. McGaugh that was parked partially in the lane number 1 and angled to the southwest. It was accompanied by a sunroof frame that was found next to the median. This frame also had apparent tissue or blood found on it. Going back into the median, near the car, was Trooper Velez's earpiece. This would have been attached to his microphone. It was found beyond the median wall. The farthest piece of evidence found in this crash was his left shoe, found over 280 feet away on the opposite side of Interstate 90 eastbound. It was found on the berm next to the guardrail. Regarding photography used in this report, we used 7 OSP photo pouches and images provided by the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner. Evidence collection was taken care of by our investigators, except for the airbag control module, which reconstruction personnel removed. Reconstruction personnel did not interview any witnesses or the driver. The next section, and the largest section in the report, is a reconstruction analysis. This analysis came with some objectives. There were 10 to include the damage analysis of the vehicle, the Veloster, the in-car video analysis to determine pedestrian vehicle locations and its route, airbag control module analysis to determine the speeds of the vehicle during certain times of the crash event, to explore Trooper Velez's visibility and how he was dressed. We documented pedestrian injury. We documented the scene evidence with our scale diagrams. And in the end, we created a crash causation, or a summary of the findings. First one we addressed was the damage analysis of the Hyundai Veloster. In addition to itemizing the damage found on the vehicle, we also inspected the vehicle. We did a cursory inspection while it was at scene and also in the storage facility. The first item we found was the recall database. There were no open recalls for this vehicle. There were no complaints as far as anything regarding steering or brakes. Any complaints or factory letters to consumers dealt with powertrain issues or navigational issues. Tire information and condition found that all tires were in good shape. They were well inflated and they had adequate tread. Tire-related issues are not suspected to be a factor in this collision. They appear to be the correct size, and I believe they may have been original equipment. The steering and suspension of the Hyundai was found to be in good condition. The Hyundai uses an electronic steering box, so there is no fluid to use and no pump to fail. It was exercised and found to be moving smoothly without binding. The braking system was also checked and found to be operable. The pedal pressure was good, the fluid was clean, uncontaminated, and the cap was tight. The Hyundai Veloster has a 4-wheel disc braking system. And while I was in the storage facility, we did test the brakes at a low speed to see if they would lock up. The brakes did lock, there was ABS activity, and the emergency brake was functional as well, locking both rear tires. Lighting and auxiliary equipment was found to be in good condition, except for the right rear light. It still operated even though it was damaged. Windows and mirrors, other than the windshield and sunroof, and the left side mirror were found to be in good condition. Overall, it's believed that this vehicle was in good general condition before the crash. When we looked at the damage, we itemized it by section, and we showed in the report which side we considered the right and left. In the front, the lower front, we found that the license plate had been damaged and the license plate holder had been cracked. There were 2 cracks beneath on the lower plastic fairing, just below the license plate, and that the front bumper cover was also fractured as well. On the upper front of the vehicle, the hood had been deformed approximately 7 inches, raising the 2 sides on each side approximately 6 inches, exposing the engine. The manufacturer tag or the chrome spar that goes across had been broken near the H, and a plastic molding inside the hood that mimicked as a vent was also broken and dislodged. Damage to the top and front of the vehicle began at the center in the license plate area, the majority on the left side of the hood in front of the driver's position. The left side, aside from the mirror, was relatively undamaged. The left side door had a bit of difficulty getting open because of the encroachment of the hood, which had been pushed back a few inches. The plate on the left side mirror had fallen out. And on the right side, this vehicle features 2 doors, where the left side only has 1. It's relatively undamaged, except for the right rear corner. And again, the front door is impeded by the hood that's been pushed back. On the right rear, we have a bend to the rear bumper cover. We have a broken tail light, and we do have some transfer and scratches in the general area. The bumper cover itself had been a bit dislodged. It was misaligned from the rest of the right side vehicle. The top and windows had heavy damage, with the roof spar above the driver's position kinked and forced downward approximately 1 foot from the side of the vehicle. The windshield showed at least 4 areas of contact damage, 2 in front of the driver's position and then 1 inside of the passenger's position. The one on the left-hand side of the screen is suspected to be from the laser device. The undercar was found unremarkable, no large damage. The exhaust may have come in contact with the asphalt at the time of the secondary collision, but we were unsure. The wheels were found to be good, no cracks. There was some grinding on one of the rear tires, but it's not found to be related to this collision. And the interior was limited to the roof line, the roof itself, and the rearview mirror, which had been broken out. Shatter glass was found throughout the interior. The engine compartment was found in relatively good shape, except for some impressions on the air cleaner and battery, and the air dam in front had been pushed downward. The next objective we took on was an in-car video analysis. The reason for this section was to take a step-by-step look at the video itself, why it turned on, what it's capturing, and we used this analysis to correlate evidence that we found at the scene with evidence that we see actually in the video itself. It also helped us determine the Trooper Velez's route and Trooper Velez's impact location. Now, each OSHP enforcement vehicle, each one of our cars, an enforcement vehicle, has a video system that utilizes a Panasonic digital recorder. It's found in the trunk on the left side in a locked compartment. The video system software itself is found on the MCT, the computer that's up with the driver. Our cars use 2 cameras. One is the standard forward-looking camera. The other is in the rear. It's actually behind the plexiglass divider, and its job is to actually just look at the rear seat area, not for really outside. It's a smaller camera. Both cameras record in color, and the video system does have 2 microphones, one inside the vehicle and then one on the officer himself. Both of these microphones can record simultaneously. The recordings, once they're done, are forwarded or stored in an SD card inside the recorder found in the trunk. Our vehicles have 2 cameras. The rear one is solely there to look at the rear seat area. On the left is the rear camera. It's fixed, and both of these cameras don't pan. They're in fixed positions. And on the right is the one that looks out the front windshield. The recorder itself is found in the trunk, attached to the door. And then the MCT, where the software is located up with the driver. When looking at the software on the MCT, it looks like this. There's an area to record, there's other information, but it also gives simultaneous views from the front and rear camera. When the video is reviewed on a desktop computer, either at the post or anywhere else, it uses this player, which is very similar. And that is what the video has been shown in. This player here showing 2 screens, both front and rear cameras. Now, utilizing that MCT, that computer, and the software, an officer can manipulate the video as far as starting, stopping, reviewing, and he can also look through those cameras in real time. The video system itself activates through an array of triggers. If you turn on the lights, it starts. If you hit the siren, it will start. If you push the on-screen record button, the one on the camera, or the one in the trunk on the recorder itself, it will start. You can also activate the camera by the orange button on the wireless microphone. On the recording itself, there will be some information in the corner. It consists of recording date, the time, the vehicle number, and patrol post number. There's also some letters over there. If you see an M, it means the wireless microphone is activated. A C means that there's a communication going between the wireless microphone and the recorder. The L means that the emergency lights are activated, and the S for the siren. The C means is that the microphone and recorder are talking to each other. There is no recording, but that radio link is available. This is an example with the date, the time. We show an M and a C, and then the vehicle number, 3215, and the post number, post 18 for the Cleveland Post. Concerning the displays from the cameras, the front is correct. The rear camera, however, has an anomaly with it. That camera is actually showing you a reverse picture of the scene. So when someone walks through this scene and they raise their right arm, it looks as if they're raising their left. If they're coming from the left side of the vehicle, it appears that they're coming from the right. It's just the way that the camera is set up. It's as if you're looking in your rearview mirror. As you can see, the embossed lettering on the back of the rear seat is also reversed. When we looked at this, we had to keep this in mind when we analyzed the video. Once it was discovered that the vehicle had recorded the crash, the SD card was removed and retained as evidence. At the request of the reconstruction unit, we asked that particular portions of this video, namely where the crash occurred, were extrapolated into individual files by videographers from the Department of Public Safety. This allowed us to have the video frame by frame by frame. And in this case, there were 30 frames every second for this video. In anticipation of the video analysis, we wanted to find out what the camera could actually see in relation to the car. And we used the total station to create another diagram of the vehicle and the camera angles. This was the result showing the green area is what the front camera can see. The yellow area is what the rear camera can see through the rear window. And the purple or pink area off the side is what the rear camera can see through the side window of the right door. Everything in the gray is a blind spot. Going back to this, the letters and the lines are simply landmarks within the camera's field of view, which consist of the right rear door, child seat anchor, emergency deck lights, and other items and features. We begin the analysis at the first frame, 12:43:04, and when we go through the report, we list each frame by its time, and if a certain event happens within that second, we list it by frame number. So it could be 12:43:04, frame 10, 11, and so on. At this point, we see the vehicle on the berm facing west and the view from the rear camera. Now, when we look at the view from the rear camera, when we begin our analysis, we see that there's a slightly reflected area just in the corner. What has happened is that since the camera is affixed approximately an inch away from the rear divider, it is actually picking up a reflection of the driver's seat and the steering wheel and an open door, just in this one triangle area. So what we're seeing is the steering wheel, a bit of the driver's seat in blue, the exposed roadway, and the open left front door of the cruiser. For us, this was important because we can actually see Trooper Velez occupying this location. On the left, we see an open area. We see his legs beginning to move in. And on the inset, we see both legs in this open area with the door open. At this point, Trooper Velez is most likely has the door open, checking traffic with his laser device, using the vehicle for support. The vehicle itself still 8 feet from the traffic lane. Trooper Velez now roughly 6 to 7 feet from the median barrier. At 12:44, 16, and 17, we see those legs disappear. They remove. The space is left empty. Looking at the video enough, we can see his left leg. We can make out his portable radio, and then the left shirt sleeve as he moves from that location. And in the end, we see an empty area with that open door showing the ground. At 12:44:19, frame 7, we see Trooper Velez coming around the right side of the vehicle, although it looks like the left because of this reverse nature. We see the patch on his shoulder, and we see a pixelated image of what would become traffic that will be involved in this crash. Trooper Velez at this time, as he rounds the corner, is roughly 2 to 3 feet away from the corner of his car, 14 feet from the traffic lane. At frames 26 to 16 of 12:44:19, and 20, we show Trooper Velez near the corner, and he begins to raise his right hand. Although it looks like the left on here, it's actually his right. Traffic is still approaching, and his right hand begins to raise. Through the next series of frames, we see the hand raised to about shoulder level. Watching the video long enough at certain speeds, you can actually see his hand emphasizing the motion, going up and down. At this point, with the hand raised, Trooper Velez is roughly 13 feet from the nearest traffic lane, 11 feet from the rumble strip. He crosses the midline of the vehicle. Traffic is still approaching, and it becomes more prominent inside the video. He crosses between the traffic and the rear camera, and then he continues into what we call the C pillar, which on your vehicle you have at least 4 pillars that hold up the roof, the first being A, B, and we consider this the C pillar. This will cause a blind spot for the camera. As he moves into the blind spot created by the camera, it's roughly 3 feet from his vehicle, 11 feet from the nearest traffic lane. As he continues to move, he's likely 4 feet from the corner, now 7 feet from the nearest traffic lane. At 12:44:23, Trooper Velez becomes hidden by the shadowed area, which is the blind spot for the camera, depicted in this wedge. He's likely anywhere from 4 to 5 feet from the edge from the traffic lane, and about 6 feet from his vehicle. At frame 15, we can see approaching traffic, the Honda Civic and the Hyundai Veloster. In the right side door, we can just catch a bit of Trooper Velez's left arm. Just comes into view and breaks that plane. At this point, Trooper Velez is likely 4 to 5 feet from his vehicle, and roughly 4 to 5 feet from the nearest traffic lane, with his arm just inside or just outside the shadowed area. In the background, we see what would to be developing into 4 vehicles: Chevrolet Malibu, a Honda Civic, the Hyundai Veloster, and a Ford Explorer. At this point, Trooper Velez's arm is found breaking the plane again, and the Hyundai Veloster is found behind the Honda Civic. Its left, although it looks like the right, its left headlight is visible. At 12:44:24 in frame 18, the Hyundai Veloster apparently begins to make a move into the median. Into the berm. The license plate and the left side headlight is visible. The Honda Civic is now going behind the C pillar. Trooper Velez's arm is still visible in the corner. In frame 24, the laser held in his left hand is visible. Trooper Velez has apparently reacted, and the Hyundai Veloster is now most likely going over the rubble strips. Both headlights are visible, as well as the license plate. Frame 26, the Hyundai Veloster is head-on to the rear camera of the vehicle, and the left arm and laser are still apparent in the right side window. What you're seeing is the front of the laser, where it has two openings for the laser. At this point, Trooper Velez is likely 4 to 5 feet from his vehicle, 4 to 5 feet from the edge line. In these following frames, we see the left arm come out and then go back in behind the C-pillar. At 12:44:25 in frame number 1, the Hyundai Veloster is now on the berm. Trooper Velez hidden by the C-pillar. In the shadow, in frame 6, we start to see the shadow of the Honda Civic in lane number 1. In frames 9 to 12, we see the left arm of Trooper Velez again. It appears to be closer to the vehicle. And the Hyundai itself is now entering the C-pillar blind spot area. And we can see the blue Honda Civic in lane number 1. At this point, Trooper Velez is likely 4 feet from his vehicle. He's 13 feet from the Hyundai, which is also 17 feet away from car 3215, and roughly 2 to 3 feet from the Honda Civic. In frame 17, the Hyundai is actually between the patrol car and the Honda Civic, completely on the berm. Trooper Velez's left arm is raised, apparently holding the laser device. At frame 18, this is the first point that we have contact between Trooper Velez and the Hyundai Veloster. His legs are seen on the hood. The hood apparently is beginning to deflect, and the laser device is suspected to be seen at the corner. For the Hyundai, we can see the chrome H, and we can see the, which would be the right headlight. Beside the Hyundai is the Honda Civic. At the time of impact, the configuration of the three vehicles is likely to be like this. Trooper Velez is roughly 3 to 4 feet away from his vehicle. The Hyundai is 3 to 4 feet away from the same vehicle, with 1 foot separating the edge line in the right side of the Hyundai.
Trooper Jester, let me stop you there for a second. At the time of the moment of impact, where was Trooper Velez standing in terms of the lanes of travel?
He was 5 foot inside the berm on the south side of the roadway.
So that's not in a lane of travel, correct?
No.
Did he have a lawful right to be standing where he was for purposes of traffic enforcement?
Yes.
Please continue.
Showing all three vehicles, there's likely 2 to 3 feet between the Honda Civic and the Hyundai. The berm itself in this location is 21 feet wide, and there's 10 feet separating the Honda up top from the patrol vehicle. Frame 19, Trooper Velez is now engaged with the windshield. His 2 legs are visible, to include his shoe, and the grille spar and the H located on the front of the Hyundai is also visible in the corner. In this configuration, the Hyundai is roughly 1 to 2 feet away from the patrol vehicle, 2 to 3 feet from the Honda Civic, and still 1 foot inside the berm, at least from the right side of the travel lane. What we're seeing now in these pink wedges is the blind spots. We're seeing the vehicle pass through these. In frame 20, Trooper Velez is now engaged with the roof line and top of the windshield. There's obvious damage to the hood of the Hyundai. Looking closer, apparently see Trooper Velez's right arm, possibly tucked, exposing his elbow and shirt sleeve. His legs are now coming up behind him, and we see the side mirror over on the side of the Hyundai. In this configuration, the vehicle is 1 foot away from the patrol car, 3 feet away from the Honda. Space between the patrol car and the travel lane still remains at 8 feet. On frame 21, Trooper Velez is atop the vehicle on the roof pillar, the roof line, and is engaged with the sunroof. It appears that the legs are continuing to move up, and what we believe we see is a white undershirt and the ballistic vest and the uniform shirt being pulled away from the pants. At this point, the vehicle is still within a foot to 2 feet of the patrol vehicle, and is now beginning to go into the berm a little further. At frame 22, this is the last frame that Trooper Velez is visible through the rear camera. At this point, we can see the driver's side mirror and the open window of the driver's door. After that, our focus and the analysis turns to the front camera. Frame 1 of 12/44/26, we see the first signs of debris. There's a cloud of glass, laminated glass that's found in your windshield often turns into dust when struck. In frames 2 to 5, Trooper Velez comes into view at the top of the video frame. On frames 3 to 5, we see Trooper Velez coming up in the upper right-hand corner. In the middle frame, we pan back to his rear camera, which we see his Stetson hat go by the door. And on frame 5, we see him roughly anywhere from 8 to 12 feet in the air, upright. In frame 5, we can see the Honda Civic beside the Veloster. And it appears that the Veloster has cleared the patrol car. It's at this point we begin itemizing evidence that we found at the scene as we see it passing through the front camera. We have the vehicle itself. Up top we have Trooper Velez showing his right leg, his left leg, what is suspected to be a handcuff key as we follow it through the several frames, and then a silver reflection on his side, which may be from either his firearm or badge. In frame 7, Trooper Velez is roughly 8 to 12 feet above the roadway. The laser device is beginning to remove itself from his profile. In frame 8, Trooper Velez's arms are raised. The ballistic vest, the exterior ballistic vest is now being pulled above him. It's been torn. He's now beginning to shed it as he rotates. We see the laser device is now loose. We have another silver reflection. The ballistic cover is now up near his shoulders. The left leg appears not to have a shoe on it, while the right leg does. The laser device is now visible, coming from Trooper Velez. And at this point, the laser device is now free of his profile. The handcuff key continues to go down, and the shirt stay, which he used to keep his shirt down, is now apparent out of his left pant leg. Frame 18, Trooper Velez is inverted, again 8 to 12 feet above the roadway. In this frame, the wireless microphone holder is apparent. The laser device is now still falling to the ground, and his left shoe comes into the frame from the top of the video. It's on its way over to the eastbound side of Interstate 90. At this point, Trooper Velez is approaching the right rear of the Hyundai. His arms are raised. He comes down to the ground, feet first. The ballistic vest, the black ballistic vest, has been shed and is now going over the Hyundai as it slows. The wireless microphone holder is still in the air, And the laser device has either struck or is about to strike the roadway. Trooper Velez now strikes the right rear corner of the Hyundai, forcing the right rear possibly to the ground, but at least it compresses the suspension. Again, the evidence is still found in this frame. The configuration at the time he strikes the Hyundai, Trooper Velez is roughly 4 feet inside the berm, while the Hyundai is 3 feet inside the berm. Now begins to leave the right side skids. Right side skids may have continued longer. However, at that point they go onto the rumble strip, which may be hard to detect. At 12:44:27, Trooper Velez has fallen to the ground, now leaving the black colored transfers and possibly the scratch from the ground firearm. As he falls to the ground, the Hyundai is still in the berm. The Honda Civic maintains lane number 1. And then finally comes to a rest with his legs into lane number 1. He's on his back, with head facing the median barrier. The piece of white we find is most likely his undershirt from his torn uniform shirt. Frames 23 of 12:44:32 to frames 13 of 12:44:34 show the only movement I see from Trooper Velez, which is the right foot fall. It's at this time at 12:44:35 that the microphone is activated. Although the M had shown up earlier in frames, sometimes if the microphone is activated on a traffic stop and not deactivated from this device, when you activate another recording, sometimes the microphone icon is a residual icon, just stays there. Doesn't mean that the microphone's on, it means it's just picking it up from the last time. In this case, however, this is where the audio starts. Once the audio starts, we can hear the windshield wipers of Mr. Gaspar's vehicle going across the broken windshield. Now, what you've seen before is roughly 90 seconds of video. Our video system is designed that it's always running. And when I activate it, either from the belt mic or from any button inside the vehicle, or lights or siren, it goes back 90 seconds before I made that move. When it does not capture any audio until we get to the point where the button is hit. So 90 seconds before and 90 seconds after I terminate the recording, I'm getting 90 seconds of recording, extra recording at each end. That's the way our system is designed, in case we can't get the button to turn on quick enough. It'll jump back and protect us and give us 90 seconds. During those 90 seconds, again, there is no audio. So this is where the audio first comes in. As we can see on the screen itself, it shows that the mic is working. And down here on the other triggers, it shows it's working as well. Afterwards, in the following frames, we see Mr. Gaspar outside his vehicle, Mr. Sanford is approaching, and Mr. McGaugh in the blue square is in the process of pulling his vehicle to the side. In the next frame, we have Mr. Sanford apparently on his cell phone, Mr. Gaspar staying behind his vehicle, and Mr. McGaugh has exited his vehicle and is now leaning or kneeling with Trooper Velez. In this frame, we see Mr. Sanford, Mr. McGaugh, and then Mr. Gaspar apparently reaching into the vehicle, attempting to turn off the windshield wipers, which are only turned to a slower rate because they continue to move. We can hear them on the microphone. At this point, the microphone is at the base of the windshield. This frame here, Officer Dario is approaching with an item and Trooper Velez's uniform hat. Officer Mickley is running towards car 3215, will later get on the radio and attempt to contact the Cleveland Dispatch Center. Lakewood Fire Department arrives on scene. And finally, Trooper K approaches 3215, also gets on the radio and contacts the Cleveland Dispatch Center. Now, to determine the impact location, we used the video, we used the scale diagram we had, we considered witness locations or witness accounts from their written statements, and also vehicle and pedestrian evidence, items we found on the vehicle itself and on Trooper Velez. Witness accounts were reasonably consistent about Trooper Velez's movement and actions before the collision. There's a consensus that the officer was likely on the berm. The next objectives we wanted to focus on was the pedestrian collision location. So in order to come up with the diagram we saw earlier, we used the physical evidence which showed us a left side skid mark. And on the scale diagram that allowed us to put a model of the Hyundai almost on a track right beside the vehicle. We also did a diagram of the vehicle itself, showing pedestrian evidence from the front to the rear. We showed where suspected blood and tissue were found, to include strike points and the evidence like fibers. With the scanner, we also scanned the Hyundai. It allowed me to take measurements that I couldn't take otherwise, and allows us to retain this should it be needed for future use. At the front of the vehicle, a piece of pedestrian evidence we have are the fibers that are found in the left screw of the license plate bracket. The license plate itself is bent, and the paint has been removed from the 5, 6, and 8. This fiber is consistent in color with fiber found on Trooper Velez's socks. And the pattern of the interior of the fabric matches a contusion and abrasion found on the left leg of Trooper Velez. It's believed that this damage was caused by his left leg. There was a fabric imprint found on the chromed H of the front of the vehicle, which reasonably matches the fabric pattern found in patrol pants. We have the white fiber that's found within the windshield that matches the same color as Trooper Velez's undershirt. We have the microphone itself now at the base of the windshield. Additional evidence included his cell phone and the sunglass arm. Strikes to the windshield were also documented. We believe that EV23 and 24 on the left-hand side of the screen were caused by Trooper Velez's left arm and hand and the laser device itself. He did have some injury on the left side of the hand, not on the fingers, but just the hand, that was similar to what you would receive striking laminated glass, which are small lacerations. After we were completed with locating where the crash occurred, we began to look at speeds of the vehicle at the time of the crash. The first item we took a look at was the airbag control module. Lieutenant Ken was in charge of downloading this device, and he found no data with it. The device didn't record because the hit wasn't hard enough to the front of the vehicle. This is the result. It shows no recorded event. Now, similar to the process of determining the location of the pedestrian strike, we use several processes to determine the speed of the Hyundai at certain points in the collision. In the end, we were able to determine a minimum speed of the vehicle at the time that the skids were produced. We were able to show a minimum initial strike speed of Trooper Velez by his vehicle, and we could show a secondary strike speed of Trooper Velez when he came down atop the vehicle. We also did more calculations to check that earlier work. The first thing we did is use this equation. This equation is fairly simple. It's taught not only in reconstruction courses, but in basic crash investigation as well. And what this equation will allow me to figure out is the speed needed to skid a particular distance. In this case, 189 feet. That is the distance that the vehicle was braking through the berm. All I need to do is find out how far it traveled while skidding and the friction factor for the roadway. Now the friction factor it's a numerical value for how well one surface rips another. Much like sandpaper, where you have coarse, fine, or heavy. In this case, it's a numerical value. It's a decimal, 0.1, 0.2, so on. And depending on the surface, this numerical value may get higher. For example, ice is 0.1. Asphalt is 0.6 to around 0.8. There's a range depending on the type of asphalt and debris and situation. We find this deceleration factor through testing. Our agency tests for this. Other agencies do. We have the Society of Automotive Engineers have provided testing. Schools, reconstruction, universities also test these. There's a lot of published data regarding the range. And so for asphalt, our friction factor is going to be roughly 0.6 to 0.8. Now we know that the Hyundai is skidded 189 feet along the berm. And with a reasonable range of friction factors, I'm going to use 0.697 to 0.767. We can find the speed range required to leave that amount of skids. I use these factors, 0.69, 0.76. They're very conservative values. I didn't use the highest. We used conservative values in this case. But we have to remember that the speed that we find from this does not account for any energy or speed that's lost from the two collisions with Trooper Velez, or any braking that occurred before the actual skidding. So the result that we receive is simply from the skid itself. When I put the distance in, and then I put the range of friction factors, I receive a range at the time that the skids were produced of 62 to 65 miles an hour. Again, this is a minimum at the time that the skids were produced. The average of these two would be 0.732, which I'll use later. At the time of the skid, the minimum speed for the Hyundai was 62 to 65 miles an hour. Once I have those numbers, I can then use another equation that's similar to the first one, but this gives me an answer in velocity, feet per second. And I simply just convert it later on. But what this equation will allow me to do is find out the speed at impact. All I need to know is how fast the vehicle starts out with, how long it skids, and my deceleration factor that I used before. So in the first case, at the initial strike with Trooper Velez, he was struck 53 feet into a 189-foot skid. My distance is 53. I place my drag factor accordingly, and I receive a speed range at impact of 53 to 55 miles an hour. And this, again, is a minimum. I continue this process for the second strike. Trooper Velez collided with the Hyundai 139 feet into a 189-foot skid. I put my distance, my drag factors in, and I receive a speed range of 32 to 33 miles an hour. So at the time of the second collision between Trooper Velez and that vehicle, the vehicle is likely traveling a minimum of 32 to 33 miles an hour. So the minimum speed from skidding is 62 to 64.5. Speed at initial strike is 53 to 55. And the speed at the second strike, we have 32 to 34 miles an hour. You see the vehicle accelerating along the way.
I have a question, Trooper. I think you showed us a photo earlier of a posted speed limit, correct?
Yes.
At the location where Trooper Velez was struck, what was the lawful posted speed limit?
60 miles an hour.
Based on these calculations, at the beginning of the skid and your reconstruction, was the Veloster observing the posted speed limit?
No.
So was it exceeding the posted speed limit?
Yes.
Please continue.
So we have our 3 speeds from the skid alone. The next exercise I did was to look at the video. And there are some times when you look at a video that you can get a speed of a vehicle or any object. All you need to do is determine the field of view of the video, what the video sees, which we did with the map that we did earlier. We determined the frame rate, how many frames per second does the video have, which we did, and it was 30. We look at any landmarks that are in that video field that we see the object moving from. And all we do is simply time or count the video frames from one landmark to another. So if I know that the vehicle moves from point A to point B in a certain period of time, and I know the distance between those two, I can determine how fast he's going. In this case, we did several exercises, but they all dealt with the vehicle after impact. We weren't able to get a speed before impact through the rear window. The video quality was poor. So after impact, we calculated a speed range. It didn't involve any large equations, just simple division. But in the end, we received a speed range of the Hyundai after the collision anywhere from 49 to 41 miles an hour using 4 separate sections of timing. And this is to be expected because the vehicle is decelerating. We also did it for other vehicles. At one point, we checked a Honda Civic using the video. And we showed, using the same method, we showed it at 37 miles an hour, and this was after the crash in front of the patrol vehicle. The white Chevrolet we had at 57, again after the crash, and an unknown vehicle was at 53 miles an hour. For a comparison, we also did the traffic before the crash to see if what we were seeing seemed reasonable. We have an unknown dark vehicle at 70 and an unknown silver vehicle at 65 before the crash occurred. We also did Trooper Velez's movements through the video. As he moved through the video, we did the same method and received his speed of 30 miles an hour. This would have been his speed as he came to the point where he was struck again. This 30 miles an hour also matches the 30 miles an hour we have on the Veloster from the skid work. When we focused on Trooper Velez himself, we wanted to find out how fast he was traveling after the crash. And in a roundabout way, this would qualify our earlier work. The first method we used with angles, which was a bit difficult because Trooper Velez appeared to be engaged in the sunroof, which kind of disturbed the angle that he left off the car. Usually a pedestrian will leave anywhere between 10 and 20 degree angle. However, when we did this, we found that Trooper Velez, using this method, left the vehicle at 39 to 42 miles an hour. Another way we did it, we have his maximum speed that he could have left that vehicle at 45 miles an hour. And then from when he struck the ground and tumbled to a stop, roughly 35 feet, I used the same equation I did for the car, and I received a speed of 30 to 32 miles an hour. So at the time of the impact, Trooper Velez is likely going 30 to 32 miles an hour at that second impact, which matches what we have with the Hyundai. So the only variable I had in that first equation was the distance and the friction factor. And that first equation I liked because it's simple. It has the least amount of variables in it, which gives me the least amount of margin or room for error. In this case, what I did is I wanted to check that. I wanted to check those friction factors and make sure they weren't too high, although they were conservative to start out with. And what I did is I averaged them to save myself some math. It's 0.732. And what this equation will tell me is how long it takes to skid 189 feet using these factors. And in the end, when I ran those numbers, I have 3.9 seconds. So from the point where the skids begin to the point where the vehicle comes to a rest, 3.9 seconds. What I did is I took a look at the video. And at the point that the vehicle came to a stop, I backed it up 3.9 seconds. And the result should put me near the area where the skids began, which it did. I then tried it a second time, using that same friction factor, that average I used earlier. At this time, I used where Trooper Velez was struck, roughly 131 to 137 feet before the left front skid came to an end. And this told me to walk back 3.3 to 3.4 seconds. And if I did that, I should see the vehicle in the area of the collision, which I do. So what this equation is telling me is that the friction factor works here. It's most likely reasonable for my first one. So what I've done is I've checked myself. So if the friction factor using this method is appropriate, then it must be reasonable for the earlier work. I then took a snapshot. One of those video speeds that we had of the Hyundai, at one point we had 47 miles an hour. The vehicle was 67 feet into the skid when this snapshot was taken, and we have it on the video going 47 miles an hour. I then used that same process I did earlier to determine my impact speed, and I received a range of 50 to 52 miles an hour. So my video and the work I did from the skid apparently match or are very close. For our purposes in reconstruction, at least with the State Patrol, we like to have a range within 10 miles an hour. Anything larger really doesn't tell us anything. So if our results are within 10 miles an hour, we consider them good. In this case, we're well within that. It is the same that we did with the impact speed of 53, 55, and it's the same method we used with the second impact speed, 32 to 33. The next objectives we cover are the visibility of Trooper Velez, what he was wearing, was the car properly marked. We also deal with crash causation and the pedestrian injury and documentation inside the report. As far as visibility factors, the patrol vehicle was found to be properly marked and visible within the berm. It was facing the same direction as westbound traffic. There appeared to be no attempt by Trooper Velez to hide this vehicle or to engage in deceptive enforcement techniques, which are prohibited by our agency. Trooper Velez was dressed in his full uniform. All the elements were there, and he clearly presented himself as a law enforcement officer and an Ohio State Highway Patrol trooper. His emergency lights were not activated at the time, and sun glare did not appear to be a factor in this crash. It was off to the left of westbound traffic and a bit to the rear. In the injury section, we simply discussed the injuries that were found by the medical examiner. We provide a diagram that explains them. We show the exterior injuries. And all of these items match the sections of the medical examiner's report. And then we have skeletal injuries as well, namely 2 fractures of the lower legs. In the last section we have is the crash causation. And this is simply a summary of the entire report itself. At the time of the collision, Trooper Kenneth Velez was on duty for the State Patrol. He was dressed in the agency's uniform, and he was operating a marked patrol vehicle. Both his appearance at the time of the crash was in compliance with agency policies, federal directives, and the Ohio Revised Code. Physical evidence and witness accounts revealed that Trooper Velez and the marked patrol vehicle were positioned in the southern berm, and they were not approaching on the nearest traffic lane as they stood. The video recording evidence shows that the witness accounts indicate that prior to the collision, Trooper Velez was conducting traffic enforcement and then left his position to attempt to flag the vehicle. Records indicated that Trooper Velez was familiar with this enforcement practice and had conducted it before on the same roadway. And that was work that was completed by Lieutenant Thorne. The video and physical evidence revealed that as he continued to signal two vehicles, two vehicles approached with a Hyundai Veloster traveling into the berm. The Hyundai Veloster apparently failed to stop or otherwise successfully avoid Trooper Velez as he stood on the berm and striking him, forced him into the air. Video and physical analysis revealed that after the initial collision, the Hyundai and Trooper Velez collided with each other again. Afterwards, the Hyundai soon stopped within the berm, and Trooper Velez came to rest on the southern edge line. Trooper Velez had received incapacitating trauma from the collision, and as a result had died. The driver of the Hyundai reportedly suffered a minor injury to the hand. There were no reports of other motorists or vehicles being damaged as a result of this incident. Concerning the movement of the Hyundai Veloster from its travel lane, we don't have any physical evidence that the vehicle was forced from the travel lane as a result of vehicle-to-vehicle contact, equipment malfunction, a roadway defect, or any environmental condition. Lane markings and related signage was visible and in good condition at the time. The mechanical inspection of the Veloster itself did not reveal any issues. I believe that before this crash, the vehicle was in good repair. After analysis of the tire marks left by the Hyundai Veloster during the crash sequence, we have a minimum range of speeds from 62 to 65 miles an hour at the time that the skids were produced.
Let me stop you there for a second. You're traveling down the roadway in a modern car with ABS. You hit the brakes. What is going to happen with braking beginning, and how long before you leave a skid mark?
That's dependent on the vehicle itself. ABS brakes leave very light skid marks because what ABS does is it never truly wants to lock up. If we had a traditional car where we jam the pedal and the wheel locked, as you begin to skid, you start to slow and you feel the most resistance right before the skid occurs. And then the skid lets loose and you slide. What the ABS does is it gets you to that point where you're receiving the maximum friction from a roadway. And then after that, it releases and does it again and again and again. So what it's allowing you to do is get the maximum grip from that roadway during that braking event. It doesn't allow you to slide. It attempts not to. But because vehicles go so fast, the ABS, although it gets close to locking up, it does skid a little bit, and we'll leave a light skid mark. So you will see skids from ABS braking.
So, on that question, at the moment the brakes were first applied on the Veloster, and we have your calculation that at the time the skid begins, we've got this speed estimate of 62.8 to 65.9 miles per hour. Are there any observations or conclusions you can draw as to the speed of the vehicle before the skid begins?
Again, this skid is a minimum speed. It does not account for any speed that's lost leading up to that point where the ABS activates. There is some slowing of any vehicle before a skid or ABS action. However, we do not have any physical evidence that we can calculate that speed.
But is it reasonable to conclude that the speed prior to the skid was less than, equal to, or greater than this calculated speed for the beginning of the skid?
It would be greater than.
And can you state that with a reasonable degree of crash reconstruction forensic certainty?
Yes.
Okay. But you can't quantify it?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Using the same analysis of the tire marks, again we reached an impact speed of the initial collision from a minimum of 53 to 55 miles an hour. And using three separate analyses, we found that both the struck pedestrian or both units were traveling in the area of 30 to 33 miles an hour at the time of the second collision.
Council, more questions?
1 second, please. Jester, for all of the testimony that you've provided here today and the report that you've created, are your conclusions throughout supported by a reasonable degree of forensic crash reconstruction certainty?
Yes.
Thank you. Sure.
Hello, Trooper.
Hello.
How are you today, sir?
Good.
So my name is John Sin. I'm going to ask you some questions. If I ask you anything you don't understand, you can just ask me to repeat it, okay?
Yes.
You were in charge of this accident reconstruction,
Yes.
and in this accident reconstruction, you checked out the identity of various parties that were present on the scene?
As far as our unit?
As far as your unit.
Yes.
Okay. You also had an opportunity to check the status of various driver's licenses at the time of this event, correct?
I did not
Okay.
have that opportunity.
In page 5 of your report, do you have page 5 of your report?
Yes.
You make a statement with respect to my client's Ohio driver's license and the status that it was in at the date of this accident.
Judge, can we approach?
Yeah.
Case, would you have let it leave the scene?
Yeah. Eventually, but
Would it die? You would have taken some pictures. And
yes.
can we ascertain any information about the blue Honda, how fast it was going, or anything like that by looking at that skid mark?
Only the speed loss, if it did belong to the Honda.
Now, Hondas, do you know what year that Honda was? You don't have to have the exact year. It seemed to be a Honda that would be equipped with ABS brakes.
Yes.
Can you tell us why that skid mark doesn't seem to be an ABS mark?
Well, in that case, it appears dark. It appears like a sliding tire, which may be possible with ABS, but that appears to be a very dark mark compared to the other ABS from the Hyundai. It's very similar to the mark that's in between the two.
Okay. Could that be consistent with a vehicle decelerating and skidding at a very high speed?
It could be. It just shows brake application and maybe a rear tire as well.
Does it show very sudden brake activation and very forceful brake activation?
Yes, if it's a skid.
And it appears that my client's Hyundai went off the road immediately before that car began its skid.
Objection.
Is that what the diagram showed?
Yes.
Sir, at this point, as my client's beginning to leave skid marks, would he would actively be braking at that point, would he not?
Yes.
So he's slamming on his brakes, and the brake ABS is doing its job, but the car is still taking 189 feet to actually come to a stop.
Yes.
So at the time my client's car came into contact with the trooper, my client was jammed on the brakes, and is there anything more he could have been doing to slow that car down than what he was doing?
Overruled.
No.
There's no other equipment he could have used to try and slow it and try and make it so that he didn't hit the trooper at that time?
The only available avenue would be the emergency brake.
Okay. So he skidded right through the trooper
Yes.
and continued to skid.
Yes.
Sir, can you tell me the distance between, I guess I'd have to know this. Can you tell me whether or not this tire mark came from the left tire or the right tire of the car that laid it? How do I go back? I didn't do So you need that one there. Thank you, sir. Do we know whether that came off the driver's side tire or the passenger side tire?
No.
Well, assuming that it would be, well, let's just take it from the actual tire mark itself. What's the distance from that actual tire mark to the trooper's car? I don't want to do as the bird flies. I want to do just the width. How big of a space between the one car and the other car did my client have to put his car between? Follow what I'm saying?
You're asking the space between the Hyundai and the Honda Civic and the patrol car.
I'm assuming that Hyundai had to maneuver itself between the Honda Civic and the patrol car at some point.
Yes.
And he was able to successfully maneuver himself between both cars without hitting either one.
That's correct.
What is the distance between those two cars? How much of an avenue would you had width-wise to get through?
At the time of the impact, there was 10 feet separating the patrol car, or approximately 10 feet separating the patrol car and the Honda Civic.
So my client at that time was able to successfully put his car through that 10-foot spot without hitting either vehicle based on your reconstruction.
Yes.
And again, what color is this roadway?
It's gray.
And what color is the trooper's car?
Silver.
And what color is the concrete barrier?
It is gray.
And what color are the trooper's uniform?
Dark gray and black.
Now, sir, you did look at all the witness statements that were given in this case to different police authorities, right?
Yes.
And you took those into consideration and you actually put those into your report.
Yes.
And you attempted to be as fair and impartial as you could be with that.
Yes.
Because the information that you put in the report and the information you relied upon helped you make a determination as to what happened here.
Yes.
Sir, did you have an opportunity to read the witness report from a David Wachowski?
Yes.
Wachowski? He was a lawyer who testified in this case that he was an eyewitness. Right?
Yes.
Do you have a summary of what you thought was relevant? Or did you actually put his statement in your report?
I didn't put his entire statement in the report. We addressed his statement by section, or how it applied to a certain section.
Can we have a page reference, please?
What page, John, sir?
99.
Thank you, sir. So, as he testified, and as we saw in his in his written report, that attorney, David Wachowski, indicated that he heard a loud braking sound immediately prior to the trooper being struck. Almost like I think he said, let me read it to you, heard screeching brakes. Remember that in his report?
A little bit. I haven't seen, or I haven't reviewed the full witness statement.
That screeching brakes part didn't make it into your accident report, though, did it?
In this section, no.
That would be even more support for the fact that an individual laying these tire marks down stopped dead in front of my client's Hyundai Veloster. Would you agree?
Could you repeat that question?
That information about this screeching brake sound
Yes.
would be consistent with a car jamming on its brakes in the manner that left this tire mark.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple more, I'm sorry. The prosecutor seemed to imply that speed could be much greater than what you found, right?
Yes.
What speed was my client's vehicle going when you were able to record it first hitting the brakes?
62 to 65 miles an hour.
Okay. So we have no support that it was up any higher than that, do we? 62, 65 is our number that you're giving us.
That's the minimum, but we know that there is some braking. I can't quantify how much before you get to the point of a skid. So that you are losing speed until the tire begins to heat up and lead that skid.
Okay. In this case, this whole thing took 3.5 seconds, right?
3.9, yes.
And that takes us the whole way through the 189-foot skid.
Yes.
So what time period do you think passes between somebody says in their brain, I got to hit the brakes, and the brakes actually activate? Can that be a split-second decision?
Yes.
So your brakes, how much of a delay do your brakes have when you jam them on?
I would say roughly just a fraction of a second, depending on the brake system itself.
Okay. So the speed loss that we're talking about is a speed loss that could occur in a fraction of a second.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Trooper, just turning to the subject of quote-unquote valid Ohio driver's license, okay? You stated at the beginning of your testimony you completed this report when?
December of 2016.
At that time, had you been made aware from any other investigators that there was learned information about an Alabama driver's license suspension involved in Joshua Gaspar's obtaining a Ohio driver's license? Was that a fact known to you at the time you completed your report?
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to then say that he did not have a valid license, or is that a legal conclusion?
That was a legal conclusion. In fact, Lieutenant Kin was the one that contributed all that information to the report.
Okay. So you're simply going by the fact that he was in possession of an issued Ohio license?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this issue of this skid inside the lane, do you, for a fact, with certainty, know what caused it?
No.
Do you, for a fact, with certainty, know that it was caused by the Honda Civic?
No.
Are there indications of the skid that contradict the equipment on the Civic?
Not right away. If an ABS vehicle was braking, the rear tires can skid. It may be a rear tire skid. I'm not sure.
But are you able to state with any reasonable degree of forensic crash reconstruction certainty that that skid was left by the blue Civic?
I cannot.
On the Mikulski statement, you said it wasn't in this section. Is it in another section of your report on the issue of him hearing the sound of braking?
Not that I know of.
So Mr. Sin's question raises in one's mind the image of an unforeseen event in front of you as you're going down the roadway and how much time the operator has to react. And we're talking about whatever the operation of the Civic was in front of the black Hyundai. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is the operator of the Hyundai relieved of his obligation under the law to maintain a safe, assured distance, regardless of what's happening in front of him?
No.
Why is that?
He's to keep an assured clear distance ahead unless it is taken away by an emergency, such as somebody entering the lane or an object.
Does someone braking in front of you give you the right to leave the roadway, the legal lane of travel, to avoid the collision?
No.
Let's talk about, in that relationship of an unexpected event, the variables that can affect when you pick up the unexpected event as the following car. And the following car in this example is the black Hyundai. If one's following speed or overtaking speed is too great, and that's attributable to the black Hyundai, when the unexpected event of the blue Civic braking occurs, does the fact that there's not enough assured clear distance for the black Veloster, the Hyundai, is that the fault of the Civic or the Veloster?
It would be the Veloster.
Why?
The driver has a duty to keep that distance between two moving vehicles. On these roadways, distance, speed, and time are paramount.
And at some point, the rear view camera shows us a direct line of sight to the front of the black Hyundai. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, basic laws of physics, what the camera can see, can the operator of the black Veloster then see in front in the same reverse direction?
Yes.
Have you viewed the video at normal play rate?
Yes.
Do you ever see the Honda Civic come to a stop?
No.
Thank you.
Sir, given the speeds that we have for our highways and the technology we have in our cars, can there ever be an assured clear distance? Is there ever a distance that we could set ourselves at behind another car where we can be assured that should that car stop in front of us, we won't strike it?
Yes.
Okay. In this case, at full braking, it took 189 feet for this car to stop, correct?
Correct.
And this is a new car in good working order.
Yes.
And what is the average length of a car, if you could just guesstimate for us?
Anywhere from 15 feet and on.
Okay, so a car is about 15 feet long?
Yes.
So in this case, at 189 feet, how many cars would you have to stay back on I-90 to be assured that you could stop within the 189-foot technology limits of your brakes? The brakes are everything they can, takes 189 feet. How many car lengths go into that?
Over 10.
Okay. So are you telling us that it's the Highway Patrol's recommendation that everybody on I-90 needs to stay 10 car lengths behind everybody else on I-90?
At certain speeds, yes.
Okay. You're engaged in traffic enforcement, are you not?
Yes.
And you actually investigated individuals and you found that they violated the law of assured clear distance.
Yes.
Okay. What did you do with those individuals when you made a determination that they violated that law?
In a crash.
No, well, either, anything. If that's your only charge, what do you do with them?
You cite them.
Okay, you give them a ticket.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Right now, I'm going to send you to lunch. I've worked with the attorneys when they get back from lunch, so you may be downstairs a while if anybody started a puzzle or something. Continue. So Mrs. Smith will call you back. If you're back at the building at 2 o'clock, but again, it may be over. Keep in mind, don't talk about the case, don't want anyone to talk with you about the case, don't form or express an opinion, no investigation, and no media.
All rise.
Then you asked the last witness a question about whether there'd be an issue of citation or something, right? That will not be a proper line of argument in closing argument. How this case got here was through a grand jury. What they could or could not have done is irrelevant. The jury will consider the charges that are here, not what you or the prosecutor thinks could have been charged or may have been charged or what is done in other circumstances. We're dealing with a case that went before a grand jury in this county. This is what they returned. It's the state's burden to prove it or not.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir. So you need closing today?
I don't know. I don't know what the posture of the state's case is.
Judge, we have a stipulation that needs to reach the record regarding some cell phone records.
Your Honor, they are marked as exhibit. (1625).
Judge, I've had discussions with Mr. Sin on this exhibit. They are the network phone records for Mr. Gaspar's phone record from AT&T, and the significance of them is that I believe at 2 minutes prior to the crash, there is data transmission between the phone and the network. But you'll recall the earlier testimony that the phone itself was password locked and could not be examined. But this is external to the phone through transmissions from the phone to the network.
Did you enter a stipulation about those records?
Yes, sir, I did.
And they'll be accepted, but evidence. Or is that for Rustin driving the crazy?
Pardon?
For Rustin driving.
We have one additional witness, and then we're prepared to arrest.
Okay, so you come back after lunch with the witness. About how long?
I don't expect it to be very long.
Perhaps you'll share the witness identity with your
Already have.
opposing.
I do have an objection to this witness.
Pardon?
I do have an objection to this witness.
All right, well, maybe somebody like to tell me who it is then.
Michelle Radovic,
Radovic.
61, I believe, on the witness list.
She's a nurse from the clinic. She did not dose my client. I believe the only reason that they are bringing her in is to talk about issues they're not permitted to talk about. Specifically, my client, well, issues you said they're not permitted to talk about, such as my client's prior relapse.
What is she coming in for?
Her knowledge of procedures, of how one attends the clinic as a patient, how often they're seen, who has authority to write change orders and doses, which is not herself, and then also her general knowledge of traffic conditions midday and how you would leave the clinic, what's your mandatory lane of direction because of the new bus center median lanes on Euclid Avenue that the court's probably familiar with, where this CAAA clinic is located. When you leave their parking lot, you can't turn left to go up 55th. You have to make a right, a forced right, and then remaneuver. Either you're going to go back to 40th and then seek the shoreway, or you're going to do a circuit around the block to then rejoin 55th and go north on 55th to 90th.
And the relevance is the time issue, or?
Yeah, partially, yes.
She is not going to come in and talk about his relapse issue.
No.
Are you going to try and get information about the black box warning or anything?
No.
I appreciate that. That's one of my concerns. Another concern is I appreciate that she may be very knowledgeable about Cleveland traffic, but she doesn't know what route my client took. How is it relevant how she gets somewhere? I assume I think the idea is, well, he must have been speeding really, really fast because it takes her this long to get to work, but we don't know enough about her, and that seems to be pretty prejudicial to me.
I don't think she can talk about the route he took. All she can talk about is if you're not able to turn a certain way, and then they've already established what time he left there. But as long as she stays within those parameters, it may not be the most riveting testimony the jury has received, but it's tangential and relevant.
So will you do the jury instructions and all that after? We obviously have to close, but I assume after this witness, we do a 29 defense bullet point on the evidence, then we'll close.
We have to review exhibit objections, etc.
You may not close today.
Okay.
All I can tell you is you may not close today.
Okay.
But that's why I have them down there to be comfortable so that we can talk about the issue.
And Your Honor, do close? Do you do charge and close or close and then charge?
I let you argue first, and then I give the jury charge so that their attention is focused on you, and they're not sitting there for 45 minutes waiting to give your delivery of your presentation. The jury charge, as you know, as you all know, is rather dry.
Will there be time limits on closing argument?
No, but when you're looking at the jury and you see that they are tired of you, then it's time to stop.
I understand it.
And that goes for
I'm just asking if the court's setting a time limit.
No, I'm letting you all try your case, but the jury has a focus, and
You're free to
stay within that. If you want them to get the maximum value of your argument. There was a witness that you had thought you would call,
Yes,
but you did.
yes.
And the state had talked with you yesterday about the absence of that witness and whether that was.
Well, I'll be very frank with the court in the record. I made a tactical decision with my client's full knowledge and support after discussing this issue with himself, my co-counsel, and my client's family. And we decided not to call Dr. Bellato. My reasons were twofold. One of my reasons, Your Honor, was that strategically, I feel the state of the medical evidence is satisfactory. It's where the defense wants it to be at this point in time, so I didn't think Dr. Bellato would add a whole lot. I do point out that the court gave me funds for Dr. Bellato, so I do apologize if I wasted those funds to some degree, but he was very helpful to me. Another reason I'll tell you I didn't just pile on with Dr. Bellato, because I think he would have been, his information, while duplicative, might have been helpful, is I believe that that may have opened the door for a rebuttal witness in the form of the doctor from Case Western, whose name I don't know, Perrin. And my research on Dr. Perrin is that I don't believe his testimony would have been favorable to the defense. I think it could have been damaging. So for those reasons, all those reasons together, we decided not to call Dr. Bellato, and that's our rationale, sir.
Gaspar, you have discussed these matters with your attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you have, you're confident in the representation made to the court?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You understand as before, you don't have to testify, you don't have to offer any evidence. The burden is upon the state. Is that still clear?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Judge, we would ask for an updated defense case witness list.
I think you've heard their witness.
I understand, but so is it my understanding the defense will be resting without calling the defendant?
Well, subject to your next witness, they always can change their mind.
Well, this is why I'm asking whether, since we've already opened their case to a degree, I'm just asking if there's an understanding or expectation.
If they decide at lunch that they wish to have Mr. Gaspar testify, they can. So I'm not going to box them in.
I understand.
Thank you.
See ya.
What time for return?
We're going to be back here at 2.